I'm Kristen. Welcome to my channel. Today, I am going to be telling you all about my 4 months living in London as part of my undergraduate program with Minerva Schools. If you know nothing about Minerva, you can check out this video to find out. If you're just curious about London or you already know what's up, let's get into it. So I've done this before. I generally do a list of 5 things that I learned from being in that city that semester, and so that's what we go and do. Number 1, in London, I saw sort of like socioeconomic class divides much more visibly than I think I'm used to or that I've really seen in other cities. And I think this is specifically because where we were in London, we were in a very like higher class area, not like a old wealth area, but like a up and coming, very like I guess bourgeoisie area, because it was like tons of business people always in like top-notch suits going rapidly to and from their lunch dates and their fancy offices. That was kind of the neighborhood where we lived. And so I got to see that sort of like high end as well as the low end of like construction workers that I saw when I happened to be in a cafe at like 7 a.m. and like people who worked in cafes who mostly spoke languages other than English amongst their employees. This is kind of a side note, it's not one of my things, but a lot of the like cafes and restaurants, but especially I thought it was interesting for cafes, all of the staff would have the same, I guess, second language, but it was probably most of their native languages besides English that they would speak to each other in the cafe. So like one cafe I went to a lot, everyone spoke in Spanish. Another one, I think it was either like Italian or French that I was picking up on. And so in that way you saw kind of the immigrants that had to do the more like hard labor that were serving these businessmen. And especially like the physical laborers, like the construction workers I saw that had like completely different accents, attitudes, completely different facial expressions, just like entirely different vibes to those like bourgeois business people. And I also traveled to another city in the UK called Sheffield that is also more of a like working class city. And I saw it there as well, that it was like completely different lives that people were living right next to each other. And I guess it kind of made me just think about how the like industrialization, I guess, of England historically and the way that created very strict, harsh class divides is like especially visible still in England in a way that I haven't seen it in other places. Just made me think about that. Weird economic sortings. I don't know. I just thought about it a lot. Number 2, universal healthcare is freaking dope. This one is basically going to be a single story. It just kind of showed me how much the US is missing out on by having like very expensive, very complicated privatized healthcare, because in the UK they have the NHS, and that's national healthcare mainly for citizens, but they also cover emergency health services for foreigners. So one of my friends had a emergency health situation. I actually called up the NHS because they have a couple of lines. You can straight up call like 911, 119, 111. I can't remember what it is in the UK, but you can call like straight up emergency. But they also have like a nurse hotline where you can talk to a medical professional and they'll tell you if you need an ambulance, if you need to go to the hospital right now, you should go to a hospital tomorrow. They'll help you figure out what the deal is. And so my best friend, roommate, love of my life, had been sick for a few days and had a pretty bad fever and was suddenly having really bad chest pain and like a hard time breathing. I think those were the main symptoms. So he called up this nurse line. I did a lot of the talking at the beginning until we got up to what exactly the symptoms were, and then I let my friend talk to her. And basically, she was like, I'm sending an ambulance because I can't totally tell what this is, and there's a chance that it could be something kind of bad because of how her heart rate and chest pain was. And so the ambulance got called literally at midnight, came to our residence. At first, they like came into our apartment and checked her out a little bit, and then they were like, you know what, let's go out to the ambulance just to keep reading some things, have a little bit more space, because like our other roommate was there and somebody else who had been coming in to like visit with him. And so she gets taken out to the ambulance. I throw together like a go bag because I'm like, if she's going to the hospital, we gonna be prepared, bro. So then I follow out to the ambulance. They keep doing some readings. We're sitting in the ambulance now. And then they say, okay, babe. These two ladies that were the ambulance workers, I don't know what they're called, EMT or something, were the nicest people. I will like literally never forget them. They made me and my friend feel like so safe, so like taken care of, even though I wasn't like the one having a health issue, just because I was there for my friend. So they were like, okay, babe, we're gonna take you to the hospital because of how your heart rate isn't going down. And so we got a nice jolly little ride to the hospital. No sirens, no huge rush because it was like 1 mile away, but we got to ride in an ambulance to the hospital and taken into the ER. She was like in one of the immediate ER rooms for a little bit while they did a tiny bit more testing, and then she got moved to a waiting room. It was like 2 a.m. at this point, and actually one of the like live-in staff members from my university, from Minerva, had ridden in the ambulance with us because it's kind of his job to help support students in this kind of situation. And so when she got moved to the waiting room, it was like she's probably going to be sitting there for a while until she can get like checked into a ward or something. So finally, me and that Minerva staff member Ubered back to the residence, and it actually ended up that my friend was in the hospital for, I think, 5 days. It was almost a week. I don't think it was a full week, though, because she turned out to have a very bad case of pneumonia, that it took them a very long time to find antibiotics that actually worked to help get rid of it. So she was, like, in the hospital, being fed, being given all kinds of medicine, being taken care of for several days. And at the end of it, they gave her her medication to keep doing her antibiotics to finish out like a full week on it. And she just walked out of the hospital without paying a single penny. No money spent. No charge for all of that. Doing that kind of thing in the US would be like financially debilitating for most people. And it was amazing because she got taken care of, even though like she could probably maybe theoretically have gone through that without actually being in the hospital. Like she could have possibly done it as an outpatient or only been in the hospital for like 1 or 2 days. Could have potentially taken ourselves to the hospital because it was covered and we knew that we weren't going to be paying thousands of dollars for it. She got much better care. She got a lot less stress. First of all, because in the residence, there's not really a good way for people to help take care of her. So it would have been very stressful for her to be like relying on other people if she had stayed in the residence. And she got better, and it was free. And I just thought that was amazing. And I wish we had it in the US. That's pretty much it. Let's move on to numero tres. Musicals. West End theater is like really cool, but also like weirdly also elite still. Like this kind of relates to the first point about class divisions. I went and saw one show while I was in London, and I have some friends who went and saw like a lot, or at least a handful, one West End show. I also saw a Shakespeare show at the Globe, and those are actually very affordable because they have the pit where you just stand, and those standing seats are really cheap. I think I got my ticket for less than 10 quid, so very doable. Much more expensive if you want one of the seats, but I honestly think the pit is better because I was literally up on the stage. So that was an amazing experience. Shakespeare theater, 10 out of 10 would recommend. But the actual West End shows are so ridiculously expensive, and it's also like very difficult and unpredictable to try and get like rush tickets that are cheaper. So the one West End show that I saw, we did rush, and we got standing room tickets to stand like behind the dress circle, and those were still like £20, I think. The actual seats were super expensive, and I just think it's so weird yet interesting how this is supposed to be such a big part of like London's culture, or like, yeah, pretty much London's culture. All of the theaters, there are tons within a few blocks of each other, like it's a real experience. But it's like so inaccessible to so many people. It's so like strange. I guess I haven't really experienced like the living division of like highbrow versus lowbrow art. And so this was like my first almost delve into more highbrow art, because I think like the messages of art, the experience of art is like something that everyone should be able to experience. And I know that it's expensive to like lease out these theaters, expensive to pay these actors, actors, but I don't know, I don't like the feeling of exclusivity in the arts. So I guess this is more of a me thing, but I just don't love feeling like art is inaccessible. Number 4, this is one I could have discovered in Europe, but I only really got into it in London. But that's that traveling in small countries or in regions of a bunch of small countries like Europe, but that sort of thing also exists in Southeast Asia a little bit. I took a train to a different city on the other side of England, and it took me 2 hours on the train to get there, which London's not the far south, so getting to the north isn't that far. I know the furthest distance across England are longer than 2 hours, obviously, but you can still pretty much cross the country in a day, which is absolutely insane to me. But so I did a day trip to another city, and I was still in that city for 10 hours, and it was so cool and so easy, and I was like, wow,
this is mind-blowing.
Because in the US, I really haven't seen most of the country, but living somewhere like England, if I was there longer term, if I didn't have stressful school stuff going on, I would be able to see the whole country, weirdly easily, which is kind of awesome, and kind of I think it's a strength in terms of the country having a unified culture and maybe a slightly more unified identity, because I feel the US is very divided because of how big it is, and your identity is more with your state or your region, the South or the West or the East Coast. And so I just thought it was cool that the country was so condensed, and also that you could get to other countries so easily. London is officially the semester I've traveled the most because I took 2 trips. I had that day trip to Sheffield, and I went to the Netherlands with a couple of friends, one of whom lives in the Netherlands, so we stayed at his place with his family, and it took us literally less than an hour to fly to the Netherlands, and the flights were so cheap. And it's something I thought about doing in Germany, but I was too stressed out. I get really bad travel anxiety, if you didn't know. And so I never did it in Berlin, but I did kind of do it while we were in London. And I thought it was just amazing that the world is accessible, and it's so easy to be exposed to people who are a little more different than you. Yeah, it was cool. I like it. 5 and finale. London. I really finally experimented with / tried to seek out communities where I could learn from other people and learn with other people and kind of try to organically network in that way. Even though I still didn't really keep in touch with anyone, it was nice to kind of get out of the Minerva bubble in a way that I hadn't really before. And yeah, that going to classes and learning even in one-off seminar sessions with other people is a great way to feel connected to people, to feel there's other people out there who are going through the same things you are. So I did a few things. I went to dance classes for most of the semester in London, which was really cool. Also, exercise is cool, and me personally, I only really exercise when I have that kind of commitment, and I only really like enrolling in classes that I think are fun and are not just exercise, hence dance, which was really cool, really fun, really great, and also just felt nice to have a little bit of camaraderie with the other people there. And also, I did a screenwriting workshop, which was only for 4 weeks, but they were 2.5-hour sessions once a week. And that was super cool because it was a super small group of just 5 of us and one leader, teacher, mentor, whatever he should be called. And we did a lot of just listening to him tell us stuff, but also we did writing exercises there, sort of homework writing exercises, and then we got to read those out and get feedback from the other people there, as well as the tutor, I guess. I don't know what to call him. And that was really cool because I had kind of been doing that screenwriting thing just in my own bubble, in my own head, not really sharing anything with anyone. So it was kind of cool to be able to get some feedback that I was doing some things well, get sparked for new ideas every week, just listening to other people and listening to the conversation, and have inspiration, a group of people who are being creative in a way that I'm also trying to be creative. The third thing I did is that I went to one-off seminar on boom mics. So I'm interested in working in film, and I don't really know anything about sound. So I was I'm gonna go to this workshop for sound specialists and just see what I can pick up from listening to them talk at a level slightly above where I am. It was actually really cool. I feel I have a somewhat better grasp on what's going on with sound, even though I'm still recording this with a podcast mic balanced on my tripod that is kind of mediocre and is recording on a program on my laptop that I don't really know how to use. But in theory, with more equipment, I would potentially know somewhat what I would be doing with that equipment. And I also got to talk to a woman who actually does sound, who does like more... She's not really a boom operator. Most of the time, she does more like working with the lavs and like all of the other mics that are more stationary or set up places. And it was really cool to talk to her about her experience with that and like learn more from the perspective of a woman in the industry, what it's like being the minority, being the woman, and also why it's really cool to have women on set. Like, for example, she told me a lot of actresses, when they're getting mics like hidden in their costuming, are much more comfortable having a woman being the one putting that mic on them, and usually like say like, oh, it's so awesome that there's a woman on the sound team to do this because it makes me feel so much better. And it made me think of all the little benefits of like having more women in film that I hadn't even thought about. And I thought that was really cool. So basically, getting out of the bubble, trying to meet people, it's cool. Even though I have social anxiety and I don't really follow up on these relationships super well. Just one conversation, just a few conversations is still super fun, super worthwhile. And yeah, that's pretty much all the things I took away from London. I hope you found this somewhat interesting. A lot of these were more just like life than London particularly. But I think that's just because of like where I'm at, having traveled so much, having already experienced a lot of different cultures, and having England be like relatively close to what I'm used to in the US, of being like Western, fairly like independent orientated. Also, I love Love Island, but that was before London. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Let me know any questions you have, and I hope y'all have a good day. I haven't done that in so long. Bye!